The nuclear crisis with North Korea prompting a rare powwow tomorrow at the White House involving all 100 U.S. senators. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Defense Secretary James Mattis will lead it. This meeting comes as North Korea is flexing its muscles and stepping up its nuclear efforts. A report in the New York Times claims the North now has the capability to build a new nuclear bomb every 6 weeks. So does the White House meeting suggest something big could be coming? Joining me now, it's former Texas Congressman Ron Paul and former CIA officer and president of Diligence LLC, Mike Baker. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
There I am, right in the middle.
Thank you.
Right where I love to be. All right, so I'm going to be honest with both of you. I'm very, very torn about North Korea. The idea of a regime headed by an insane person with nuclear devices kind of scares me and keeps me up at night. It makes me worried about having kids in a big city. And, you know, Dr. Paul, I usually agree with you that, you know, we don't want to get into another needless war. But what should we do about North Korea, Dr. Paul?
Well, I'd first sit back and think about it and wait a minute. And if they ever get their street lights on, I think you should consider they might be a threat. But they can't get their street lights on yet. So I think this building up of an enemy is something we've been doing for 30, 40 years. We always have to have one. And we certainly had a lot of things to worry about against Saddam Hussein. It all turned out to be lies.
Yeah.
So I would say that the first thing, why provoke them? Why go over there and poke them in the eye, you know, looking for trouble? And there was a hint that China suggested that if they relieved a little bit of sanctions, or they would help us out with, China would help us out with Korea, if all we did was quit the military exercise. Why do you have to have a military exercise? Are we so insecure that we have to put a naval flight, you know, flotilla over there and say, don't move or we're going to blast you to kingdom come? That's to me just warmongering and unnecessary. And yes, we should be concerned,
yeah.
But we were concerned a bit about Russia.
But I do think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between Saddam Hussein and whether or not you believe that he had WMD and North Korea, which clearly has nuclear capabilities. And so I turn to you, Mike Baker, because Dr. Paul makes a good point in that, yes, I think this is different. Yes, I think this is unprecedented. Yes, I think they're incredibly dangerous. But why not let China take care of it?
Well, because they haven't for a very long time. And they haven't for their own reasons. Look, they're acting in their own best interests from their perspective. Now, part of the problem is, and I agree with Dr. Paul, I mean, in the sense that, you know, okay, yeah, nobody wants to get involved, and nobody wants a military incident on the peninsula. There's no doubt about that. But we're here now. We're at this point in time where North Korea has gotten almost to the finish line in what they've been working on for quite some time, which is an infrastructure that combines nuclear weapons capabilities with their ballistic missile program. And that's not just a threat to the regional allies there, who are, it's not just us as a concern, mind you. We've got allies in the region that are extremely concerned about what this means in terms of instability there and their own existence. But if we just kick the can down the road, as the previous administration, the one before that and the one before that, going for quite a ways down the road, if we just continue to say, I just don't want to deal with it, fine. But we will get to that point where North Korea then does have the ability, because that's what they want, to be able to reach not just our regional allies, but the U.S. And if we're willing to live with that, then fine. We can just close our eyes and kick the can down the road. All right, so
at what point do we act on that? And so, Dr. Paul, I want to ask you, I mean, do we wait until North Korea launches a nuke at us? At what point do we respond?
We waited a long time with the Soviets. I was in the military in the 60s. We waited and waited, and finally they self-destructed. And same way with Korea. They're going to self-destruct. Nobody has absolute proof about what kind of a bomb they have. We do have pretty good evidence that their missiles very, very rarely, if ever, work. And to just get hysterical about this and say that, well, it's insecurity. It's just like we're terrified. They know what we have. We need to have our submarines floating around there.
I guess there's a difference. I guess the difference would be that, you know, we had détente, which seemed to work for both sides in the Cold War, and that was assuming that you had two rational actors that cared about their people. And, you know, to your initial point, yeah, the streetlights might not be on in Pyongyang, and people are starving to death, and hundreds of thousands of people are in hard labor concentration camps. So I think all the money that they do have, the economy that's been propped up by China, has been going into their defense program. I'm not saying we should bomb them. I agree with you. I don't even think that we should be in the region, but I also don't want to see my family obliterated on the west coast of the United States because...
Well, then we should change our foreign policy. One thing is if you stir up enough trouble over there, which we may be on the verge of doing because you don't know what our president's going to do tomorrow or the next day, I'll tell you what, on conventional weapons, they can do a lot of damage. And the other thing is you have no evidence that North Korea has invaded neighboring countries. They've been minding their own business, destroying their own economy, and they're out of, they're out of it completely. Yeah. But believe me, they're not on the verge of committing total suicide. They like to throw their weight around.
They do. They like to flap their gums. But at what point do you take the threat seriously?
Frankly,
Mike Baker, last word.
If I could jump in
here.
First of all,
playing to our base.
No, I understand, Dr. Paul. I just want to give Mike the last word because we're running out of time.
Excuse me. First of all, comparing this to the Cold War, it's apples and oranges, right? You're not comparing
That's right. The Cold War was a lot worse.
Situation. Right. Well, and again, the point being is the Soviet Union didn't collapse under its, by itself. There was a great deal of work done here in the U.S. We didn't just close our eyes and say at some point the Soviet Union is going to collapse and that problem's going to go away. That's not the way the Cold War worked, and that's not how the resolution of the Cold War happened. So with North Korea, I guess my point would be here, that's fine. If we just want to say we're isolationists in that part of the world and we don't mind at some point that Kim Jong-un and an unstable regime develops, and they're close, develops this capability, then fine, let's step away. But I think what's going to actually find a resolution to this is if China finally believes that we're serious about a solution here. And the current administration, this is not the result of the Trump administration, but the Trump administration, I will give them credit for speaking an uncomfortable truth.
All right, well, unfortunately, gentlemen, we have to continue this discussion at some point. You're both incredibly smart. You're passionate, rational men. And I know what I want for my birthday. It's to play drunk history with these two. Thank you both so much.
Kennedy, it's
you and us both,
we want.
Go ahead, Dr. Paul. What was that? Last word, last word.
I say it's liberty we want. We don't want confrontation. We are not the isolationists. It's these people who use sanctions day in and day out on all these countries, stealing their wealth. And look at the sanctions on Iraq and Iran. All that never did any good at Cuba. So, yes, we are not the isolationists. It's the people who think they're running the world. They are the interventionists, and they are looking for trouble, and they isolate too many countries away from the world through our intimidation.
Isolationism versus intervention, a very important distinction. Dr. Paul, thank you for making that point. Mike Baker, thank you for being here.
Nations.
I don't know about that. Thank you both so much. I appreciate it. This has been great. All right, coming up, student loan debt out of control, but wait until you hear how many parents have been able to make a payment. They have not made a payment in over a year. That leads us to tonight's trivia question.